Before the release of Avengers Endgame, there was a lot of talk about how Kevin Feige, Marvel Studios president, wanted to usher in a new era for the MCU where there was a lot more female representation. And we saw that materialize in the movies and shows that came out following Avengers Endgame. But unfortunately, those haven't really worked out too well. And as a result, it looks like Marvel is kind of backpedaling a little bit on that one, because when they made the casting announcement for Avengers Doomsday, a lot of people noted that some of the female heroes that they've introduced within the MCU were conspicuously absent from the casting announcement. Now, this didn't necessarily mean that they weren't going to appear in it whatsoever, because they also said that that wasn't necessarily the final announcement. But now we're starting to hear word that maybe that actually is true, where some of the more unpopular female characters are actually just going to be left out of the movie. And not only that, but just left out of the MCU moving forward. But before I really dive into these rumors, if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button. If you can, leave a comment, tell me what you think about this, and also hit the like button too, or dislike it if you want, because it really helps out with the channel. No Tatiana Maslan, She-Hulk for Avengers Doomsday. This is coming from Cosmic Book News. Nerdrotic says Tatiana Maslan, She-Hulk won't be showing up in Avengers Doomsday, marking another major omission from Marvel's next big crossover. Now, again, these are rumors, but Nerdrotic does have sources over at Marvel and some of the things that he's posted about in the past that turned out to be true. So I'm not necessarily saying these are 100% confirmed or anything like that, but I do think there is some credibility, especially when you look at how Tatiana Maslan has actually been behaving following the release of She-Hulk and the negative reception to it. She definitely comes across as either someone who doesn't expect to be hired by Disney, at least not anytime soon, or she's just incredibly stupid with what she said in the public. The YouTuber tweeted there is no She-Hulk in Avengers Doomsday, following up on his earlier claim that Brie Larson's Captain Marvel was also left out of the massive ensemble along with Dominique Thorne's Ironheart. With those female-led Disney Plus heroes reportedly sidelined, it looks like Marvel is quietly moving away from its most divisive and costly recent characters. Now, I know Dominique Thorne, she's said that she doesn't expect to be in Avengers Doomsday, but maybe she has something later on down the road. Brie Larson, she's been asked about whether she'll appear in it, and I think she's even said that she doesn't expect to be in it, or she basically made no commitment of whether or not she'll appear in the MCU moving forward. So again, this kind of is almost confirming what we already know to be true, but still, Disney has not made any official announcements about this, but they usually don't get in the habit of announcing people who are specifically not going to appear in a project. They'll just kind of announce who's going to be in it. And then once the movie or show finally comes out, then we can see who is kind of in the final casting for that. The She-Hulk Attorney at Law series was one of Marvel Studios' most expensive streaming shows, costing an estimated $225 million to produce. Despite the massive budget, it drew some of the weakest viewership numbers of the MCU's Disney Plus slate and was heavily criticized for its tone, writing, and over-reliance on CGI. Now, I'm not going to necessarily criticize She-Hulk for having a lot of CGI, because, I mean, you kind of have to do that with the character. I mean, perhaps they could have just cast a female bodybuilder, a tall one, and then painted her green and kind of gone like the Lou Ferrigno wrote for that. I mean, I think that would have been kind of interesting if they did that, but making a CGI She-Hulk, I think that's fine. But a lot of the other criticisms for the show, especially with the writing and other stuff like that, I think that is fair criticism, because the show was essentially designed just to attack the Marvel audience. The series starred Tatiana Maslan as Jennifer Walters, cousin of Bruce Banner, who transforms into She-Hulk after receiving his blood. While the show was positioned as comedic fourth wall breaking legal sitcom, it quickly became a flashpoint in the ongoing debate over Marvel's declining quality and heavy-handed social messaging. And that's not even just hyperbole or anything like that. I mean, Jessica Gao, the showrunner for She-Hulk, even said that that pretty much was her whole point, was basically just to attack the fan base of the MCU, which is not really a smart move, if I'm being completely honest, to make a series within a franchise, and the whole point of your series is to try to attack the fan base of that franchise. Now, I know the idea behind it, and that's why Kevin Feige wanted to have more female representation within the MCU, was that they're like, okay, we got this male demographic locked down. I mean, the audience for the MCU was heavily male skewing. I mean, I'm not saying there weren't females who liked the MCU, but it was more or less a male brand. And they're thinking like, okay, we got the male demographic locked in, so let's try to attract more of a female demographic. So appeal to them by having more female characters. Like, okay, I mean, on paper, that's not necessarily a bad idea. The problem is the way they went about it was basically creating poorly written female characters, basically, who were just the best at everything. And that's something that no one really is that interested in. And then when they started getting criticized on that, then they start attacking the fan base and saying like, oh, well, they're just a bunch of sexist males out there who don't like this because they don't like strong female characters. Never mind the fact that there are already strong female characters within the MCU prior to their shift. A lot of people were critical over the MCU because they didn't give Black Widow her own movie. A lot of people liked the Scarlet Witch, but still they were insisting that that same demographic was also sexist because they don't like Mary Sue type characters. So they start attacking the fan base. And the show of She-Hulk was essentially just bitter females trying to attack men for not liking them that they write Mary Sue type characters or other things like that. And obviously that didn't go over very well with the audience. And as a result, the show was heavily criticized and flopped miserably given how much money they actually spent on it. Show never got renewed. And now the Tatiana Maslany was left just kind of bitter about the whole experience, and she kind of took it out on not only the audience but also on Disney too. Maslany hasn't helped Marvel's public image since the show ended. The actress made headlines for taking shots at Disney CEO Bob Iger supporting striking workers while accusing the studio of greed during the SAG-AFTRA and WGA dispute. She also waded into cultural politics by promoting trans rights, which drew mixed reactions online. Most recently, Maslany made waves by calling for a boycott of Disney Plus, telling fans to cancel their subscription. While you don't often hear from one of the company's own stars, as reported earlier, she told fans to cancel due to the Jimmy Kimmel controversy. Now, I think this is her basically understanding that she doesn't have a future within the MCU. That's why she's taking these shots at Disney, because if she was hoping that she can actually get work from them down the road, that's an incredibly stupid thing for her to do, basically to attack someone and then basically ask them for a job down the road, especially when what you did previously for them was wildly unpopular. Now, if She-Hulk was a very successful show, made a ton of money, people loved the character, then maybe she could have a little bit of a clout and could actually make those statements and still expect to get work. But from Disney's perspective, we're like, okay, well, you're attacking us and you lost us money in the past. Why would we be interested in actually bringing you on board? And I think she understands that. That's why she was making those statements, because like I said, if she was hoping to get work from them later on and she was still making those statements publicly, then she is incredibly dumb on that matter. But it does feel like seeing all this, that Marvel is kind of taking a step back from leaning more, or at least trying to pander to that female demographic. I think they saw that as kind of an experiment that ultimately didn't work out for them. That's not to say that people don't want strong female characters. It's just they have to be better written than what we've gotten with the MCU in the last 5 years or so. Right now, what's been stated is after Avengers Secret War, there's supposed to be sort of a reboot of the franchise. That's not necessarily saying it's a complete reboot, but they're going to kind of find something within universe to do somewhat of a reset. Then they can start recasting some of the characters like Iron Man, Captain America, because you can't afford to pay Robert Downey Jr. $50 million every time you want him to come on board. So they're going to find some way in universe to justify recasting. And I think that's a fine move. It's just a matter of whether or not they're actually going to continue on with this new trajectory that they've done over the last 5 years. This whole experiment about having female characters and their sole purpose is basically just to attack the male demographic that was previously fans of the MCU, because it's fine if you want to try to expand the fan base of something like that, but you don't do that at the cost of the existing fan base. And what Marvel essentially did was basically say, we built up this fan base over the last 10, 15 years, and then we're just going to cast them aside in order to try to appeal to a different fan base. But if the women that weren't already watching Marvel movies were interested in watching Marvel movies, then they would have done it to begin with. But all Marvel did was not only alienate the male audience that they already had, but they also alienated the female audience that were already watching it, because clearly they like something about the MCU, which is why they're watching it. But when you start making these big changes into the franchise and into the tone, well, then you just basically alienate the existing fan base you have in pursuit of someone who isn't really even interested in watching it to begin with. So hopefully Marvel learned their lesson and they're going to correct course on this one. But right now, I'm not really holding out much hope on that one, because Kevin Feige is still politically motivated, to say the least, in order to try to push the female demographic or the strong female characters like he's been doing. So I think he's going to continue to do that, but I think they're going to try to make it a little bit less overt right now, because they understand by attacking the audience outright, it's not beneficial to their bottom line. But let me know what you think about this in the comment section below. Also, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because it really helps me out. And if you can, hit the like button too and share the video out there. That's all I got. Thank you.